Is Buzzy going to be here tonight? Eventually. Okay. Oh, Craig, you were willing, would you be potentially willing to do tomorrow's planning commission meeting? Okay, thanks. I just want to make sure you have at least all the representatives.
Ready? All right, welcome to the May 4th, 2022 North Logan City Council meeting. It looks like we will have to excuse Buzzy for the moment. I believe he is at the jump zone right now. Just so you guys know, I'm not going to lie for you guys. If you're gone for any reason, I will at least make up something that's embarrassing.
Okay.
We will begin with the pledge led by Roger Anderson, after which I will say the prayer.
Everyone could please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we ask that as we meet today as a city council, that we may do so with thy blessing, that we may be deliberate and that we may be just in the decisions that we make. Please help us to serve the citizens who elected us, and please bless our city with more rain. We're thankful for that which we have received, and ask that thou would watch over our city. And we ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right, I would entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda with one modification. We are no longer going to be discussing the Smiling H subdivision. And is there anything else, Ellen, that we need to move?
No, that's it.
Okay, so I would entertain that motion. Yes.
I move we adopt the agenda, striking number 3.
All right, motion by Craig.
I'll second.
Second by Joni. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I believe we have several meeting minutes to approve. Marie, would you mind telling me which ones those are?
Yeah, it's regular argument and executive session for February 2nd, regular and closed session February 16th.
All right. Unless there are proposed changes, I would accept a motion to approve all of those.
Motion to approve minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion by Emily, second by Roger, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, Alan, do you want to take us through, follow up on issues from our previous meetings and the action items?
Yeah. Jumping down through here, the RFPs for the Civic Center. The city office portion of the Civic Center. They were due yesterday. We had 5 firms submit on that, which is fantastic. And then we'll get together later this week, tomorrow, to score and rate each of those RFPs. So that's exciting. And then jumping down through here, communication committee, we have new interns, and they'll help keep our social media going forward to where we establish it, working with both the mayor and the PIO, Marie. And then jumping down through here, water. We're applying for the a USDA grant here shortly for all the different water things that we have coming on. Hats off to the mayor and the securing of the property for one of those items coming up. And our well, we went out for an RFP for well drillers. That's more like a nationwide, because that's not as prevalent in one state. A lot of them come out of Texas. So we have had at least 4 or 5 of those, and those will come in at the end of this week. They're due. And so that's really exciting to see actual bids coming through. And most cities that have done that in the past 2 years have maybe had one firm bidding on that. So I think we at least have 3 or 4. So that's really good. Hopefully the prices come down at that point for drilling our new well. But jumping down through there, sewer, we will apply for a bond from the Division of Water Quality to put in our trunk line through that winds through North Logan down through Logan down to about Gosners is where it ends. And so that will take place in the next couple weeks. And then they're doing obviously maintenance items throughout the city. Streets, they're doing crack sealing at this time. It's kind of hard. They're starting crack sealing while still doing some plowing this week. It's just odd, but they are doing both of those at once, and hats off to them. Stormwater, they're getting all of the different contractors up on Compliance Go, which is a program that tracks everything that's going on. Engineering, they're finalizing several things, one with the USDA loan, but then also 1200 East. So working really hard on that, getting those things prepared. Parks, they have endless projects going on right now. Everything down at Meadowview or the Cash Recreation Complex. So there's 4 or 5 different projects going on down there right now at this time that they're working on. And then they're also doing some things up on the east end of Elk Ridge. So you'll see them in the next few weeks. That's in addition to all the mowing and prep and fertilization that they're taking care of on a day-to-day basis. So they're extremely busy right now. Bonneville Shoreline Trail will start working on some things. The property we acquired, we'll tie that in. We had a good meeting this last week with the county to talk about grants that we've received, a $70,000 grant for trails. And then we'll work on some of the canal trails that we've been talking about as well. Recreation, if this would drop down, you can go to their tab. They have about 20 or 30 programs coming up. So if you look at the newsletter, it's off the charts, the number of programs that they're putting together right now. So just watch for that. The details are on the newsletter or on the rec website, but there's a lot of things going on. Facilities, Dathan's been working super hard. He's been getting everything set up in each of the different departments, kind of taking over for Yeldy and pushing that forward. A cemetery, we're prepping for Memorial Day, and they are working on secondary watering plans. They'll also be planting the trees that we lost this past year in the cemetery due to our water conservation. So it's one of the negatives. We're trying to cut back on water as we do lose some trees. So we'll have to do better this year as we plant those trees again. Community development, they have several things coming up this week. They'll be talking about a subdivision north of Aspen Meadows here on that small parcel of land that they've been talking about for a few weeks. And then at the next planning commission meeting, we probably need to clarify this in this meeting. We talked about having the combined workshop and whether that was in city council or planning commission. I assume it's in planning commission.
I think that's right.
On the 19th. And so we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later on, and maybe Spencer can clarify that later on in the meeting regarding that next workshop meeting combined with the city council to go over several items related to general plan and land use elements. Economic development, we've been working on several things, a fine-tuned master plan for the area kind of north of 2500 north on both sides of Main Street. And our CRA is basically just wrapping up at this time. We're really excited about that. It's been a long time coming, working through that. We'll talk about it a little bit more tonight. I'm going to jump down through a few of these. Jump down to human resource. We have 2 new interns working through that. They'll start and they'll continue forward with the things that we've already progressed on the last few months. A lot of employee recognition and other things that were requested by the employees when we did this employee survey. Recorder, we'll talk about the budget tonight. Thanks to Scott for putting together several of these items. And this next meeting, or the June 1st meeting, is a huge meeting, and Scott's already preparing for that as well. That's budget, that's a discussion about property taxes and other things will take place. Library has a lot of programming going on right now. Obviously, they just have the 3 items up here, but if you look in the newsletter or online, they have a lot of programs coming down the pike right now. So if you look through that, you'll see a lot of things. Police were working on the nuisance properties together. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the fire department tonight, but they're doing a drill at the U-Star building. That's one of the large buildings at the Innovation Campus. And so, but we'll talk a little bit more about fire department here shortly. Sorry, I jumped through a lot of those things pretty fast. If you have other questions, let me know.
Could you
No, thank-
clarify,
oh.
sorry, would you clarify CRA for those that might not know what that is here?
That's a loaded question. An RDA is a redevelopment agency. That's the old acronym they used. It's a fancy name for tax increment financing. What it is we work with the school district and with the county in certain areas where they give a portion of their property taxes to the city to help incentivize economic growth. The portion that they would give to the city is based off of the increase in value. So if you take an agricultural field that doesn't pay a lot in property taxes and they develop that property, that change in value comes to the city, a portion of it. Each entity keeps their portion, but a portion that comes to the city for a certain number of years, and that's used to incentivize economic development and growth in those areas. But RDA changed to community reinvestment area about 3 years ago. That's a CRA. Then I understand this year they changed it again to EDZ, Economic Development Zone, and they'll probably change it again before we sign on the dotted line. So sorry.
No, thank you. That's better than a Google search. So thank you.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Ellen. We will now do our recognition of our exemplary staff member. Today, that is Dathan Robinson. Dathan, are you here? No? Okay, well, this is from Ryan Campbell. Dathan Robinson has been a great new full-time employee for North Logan City. He has hit the ground running in his new position between helping get the HSC building ready, learning all the new departments he has to interact with, and even being willing to come in on a Saturday to unclog a toilet. He's been willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. So Dathan, maybe if you watch this later on, thank you for your contribution to the city. We'll give him a hand.
Yeah.
All right, and then next we have our recognition of a former planning commissioner. And I want you to know, Eric, that this isn't something that they do for every planning commission member. So you're special.
Is that because they didn't do it for you?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, it
okay,
is.
just wanted to clarify.
No, but in all seriousness, I had the pleasure of working with Eric on the planning commission, and he was known for being very deliberate, very reasoned, and just very smart in helping train the rest of us in how to analyze those ordinances. And he was a true asset to the city. And I know that he put in a lot of time, even outside those planning commission meetings, if his preparedness is any indication. So Eric, thank you for your service on the planning commission. We have a plaque and a gift for you.
Get a picture of the two.
Yeah.
Everybody else.
You need one of our shapes.
I think, can't she just send up?
I can
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
Content.
All right, then we will begin on our action items, beginning with item 2, a proclamation recognizing International Firefighters Day. And as you noticed, those firefighters were called out in the middle of, I think it's probably appropriate that they had to rush off on a job while they were supposed to be being recognized. So we appreciate their service to our city. I will read the proclamation. Whereas firefighters dedicate their lives to the protection of life and property, and sometimes that dedication is in the form of countless hours volunteered over many years. In others, it is many selfless years working in the industry. In all cases, it risks the ultimate sacrifice of a firefighter's life. And whereas International Firefighters Day is a time where the world's community can recognize and honor the sacrifices that firefighters make to ensure that their communities and environment are as safe as possible. It is also a day in which current and past firefighters can be thanked for their contributions. And whereas this day gives our community a special opportunity to express their heartfelt gratitude for the incalculable contributions which our firefighters so generously bestow upon us. Now, therefore, I, Lindsay Peterson, Mayor, on behalf of the City of North Logan, do hereby proclaim May 4th, 2022 as International Firefighters Day. And I encourage all citizens to show support and appreciation to our city, county, state, and federal firefighters who protect our lives and property so diligently throughout the year, and by remembering past firefighters who dedicated their lives to preserve our safety. So I just want to add to that our profound gratitude for everything that the firefighters do to keep our city safe. Pass that along, would you, Chief Hannock? And let's give those firefighters a hand. Yeah, let's not take away from May the 4th. All right, we will jump to item number 4, consideration of a concept plan for the log cabin subdivision, approximately 10.67 acres located at approximately 600 East, 2400 North. The proposed subdivision includes 27 lots in the R112 zone and is being proposed to be subdivided using the density determinant method. Welcome, Buzzy. And we'll just get a background from you, Spencer.
Yes, I'll give an overview here. So Alan's got the cursor right on the northernmost parcel affected. It's those 2 parcels that are included in the subdivision. 600 East is that road right there that they're fronting on. And like Lindsay said, just about 2400 North, 2300 North approximately. So this, both these parcels are in the R112 zone, our single family 12,000 square foot lot density zone. This subdivision would have 27 lots, which is a few lots under what the maximum density would be under that zoning. Yes, this is the concept plan that's being proposed. So essentially one access coming off of 600 East, elbowing and going down to the property line in phase 2. So this is also being split into 2 phases right at the parcel boundaries. So there'd be a phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1 would be the northern parcel would go in first. Phase 2 would come in later. Both property owners have met with us and spoke with us and signed up on the plan. The southern property owner just has a little bit different timetable, but they want to get a plan worked out now so that they've got it figured out for the future. So this did go to Planning Commission at the last meeting. It was approved with a few conditions, a couple things that have been called out, and they're called out in the notes here. They sent over a revised plan. These lots here, lots 11 and 12, currently are shown as 77 feet wide. They're going to get a formal survey done, a more detailed survey done. The applicant has expressed that if those lots, if there's still not enough width to get them up, the minimum is 80. So right now they're not 80. If say the line's off a little bit and those can actually be 80 feet, then that will be reflected in the development plan. If this 77 feet wide, that line holds true and is exactly where they think it is now after the more detailed survey, they'll do a boundary line adjustment or they'll change where the lots are essentially. They don't really need to do a boundary line adjustment, but they'll change the width of the lots and where they're located in the line between phase 1 and phase 2 to accommodate that. The other thing that the Planning Commission noted was just clarifying this here. So with regards to our 750-foot dead end rule, both applicants were really great to work with on trying to figure out solutions that would work with our code. Originally, the plan that was drawn up looked very different, and the applicant was willing to go in and talk to other landowners and make things work so that it worked, met the code, and would go through that right of way that's shown. The Planning Commission asked for just a little more clarity that it would be an access road and a standard would be built to make sure it met fire code. The plan is to build that road in phase 1 through here, just to the extent that it would meet the minimum fire code requirements as an secondary access road. Then when phase 2 comes in, that would be finished as a fully finished road.
So we're talking about it won't be paved until phase 2, but will it be that width, the 55 feet?
Right, so the 55 foot is the right of way. The minimum width, and we did talk about what the minimum width would be. I believe it's 26 feet in this case. And we'll need to work with them on the material just to make sure it will meet fire code. That was the big stipulation from Planning Commission. So with that access, they're going to be have 2 access points and won't fall under that 750. Another thing to note, by working with landowners and getting this access into play, further south past this boundary line, they'll have enough distance that the properties to the south of this subdivision will be able to access onto that without running into our 750-foot rule there. Another change that was made, so Alan's pulling it up here. So there are 3 pieces of land here that are otherwise very difficult to access. So the applicant in this subdivision was very willing to work with that, and it's provided a way for them to be able to access that land should they decide to develop in the future, not currently included. The other thing that was changed in order to accommodate that was this previously was a cul-de-sac as well. And again, applicant provides that so it would provide future access rather than locking that land in. So yeah, with those conditions that they've addressed, then that was a positive recommendation from the Planning Commission.
And at that point, once we hit the development plan stage, I'm assuming we'll see more details as far as timing with the roads and all of that. Like, that will be fleshed out a little bit.
As far as timing, are you meaning between phase 1 and phase
Yeah.
2? For the development plan, we'll see phase 1 first. So when it comes in at development, phase 1 will go to development plan now. And when phase 2 comes in and they've expressed, and I don't know if it's changed or if there's flex there, maybe 2 to 5 years is what was stated at first for phase 2. That would come in again as a separate development plan. But we will see phase 1, the roads included there, and the access road and how it's going to be until phase 2 is developed with those development plans.
Okay.
So I had one question. So from the intersection there where phase 1 and phase 2 meet, right, coming down as phase 2 is built, is that longer than 150 feet from that intersection to the end of that road?
Down here?
Yeah, if those lots are 70 feet, or 80 feet each, basically, you're going to be quite a distance, more than 150. So there will need to be some type of a turnaround there temporarily or some type of turnaround.
Yes, yep. So when phase 2 goes in, if the plan south is not being developed at that time, and we don't have a permanent cul-de-sac, right, we'll have to have a temporary hammerhead turnaround
Something,
or a
yeah.
cul-de-sac, yes.
Can you only build a log cabin in this subdivision?
You know,
Or can I build like another
they
different?
didn't tell me that as far the applicant. I
think
don't
that would
that's
be
a
really great.
stipulation.
Because we probably need code for log cabins.
Couple questions, Spencer. On phase 1, from the northern entry into the subdivision, what's the length between that and to phase 1, phase 2 intersection? Do you know?
That from there down around.
Yeah,
the end,
yep.
You hit 750
Right
about
there?
here, if I remember right. So
Okay.
previous plan had the cul-de-sac drawn right about there. In order to help this land and the land south be developed, the business on this was waiting to work with them in order to get this access through, which in all reality doesn't necessarily give that many more lots to Israelson piece, the log cabin piece, but does help this other land out a tremendous deal. So that was really great work in figuring that out.
So I think the only concern I have then here is the arrangement that road is not up to city standards until phase 2. Maybe a little nervous about the fact that if something happens in this market and phase 2 doesn't get developed, then we are stuck with an unfinished road to meet those last 3 lots. So I think it's something we should consider, at least as a developer to consider before, we get to development plan phase. But we've had a little bit of that lately, and it'd be better to tie it up now than have to come back a couple of years later and try to figure out what to do. That's the first comment. The second comment I had, improvements on 600 East will be part of the development plan as well. Has there been any further discussions along the current landowners on that road about historically what was supposed to be done for those improvements once these subdivisions finally came in on 600 East?
Yeah, I'll address kind of that first access question too. That was a main issue or point for the planning commission too. And I think that was the clarity that will make sure we get pinned down in the development plan for this access road. So if this access road here is built up as a second access and it's built to a standard that it's not going to be just a really narrow 10-foot wide dirt road with a chain crossing type of thing.
What's he referencing there?
We're always fat.
It's still adequately provided.
Okay.
And that was the intent. That's right. Access road here. And we'll get that cross section lined out. As far as 600 East goes, so with this subdivision, their frontage on 600 East is just this.
Right.
So that's the only portion the developer will be installing. Planning Commission also brought up, and if Alan, you want to flip back over to the GIS there, what the city's plans are to continue that cross section. I think from safe routes to school perspective, getting kids to school. Also, I don't know if anybody's been on that road. I know Eric, who's not in here, and he took off. He lives there. It's
Road is a loose term.
yes, road is being generous. It's a matter for the city of just prioritization and where we put the funding. Jordan has, and really all the departments have worked really hard to try and prioritize projects and put the needs ahead. I think this helps jump the project closer to the top of the list, but we still do have some pressing issues ahead of us. I don't know if we'll have the funding to continue it right now. There are portions historically that with landowners and agreements, and we'll have to sift through those, but the city would still have a sizable chunk that we would have to pay for to get some extent finished out down to the south. We'll have to look into that a little more in depth.
Okay.
Obviously, if we can figure out a way to make that work and get it in when the developer's putting in the road up higher, we will, but it's a funding kind of issue on the city side, I think.
We would push it pretty high on it would be a very high priority at that point. And it would probably save the city some money if we can work with the developer. We'll try. I mean, that's the thing we have to look into, is making sure that we can save all the parties some money and increase safety along this section. One of the difficult aspects is along this portion right here. It was developed over several different years, so several different standards were used during that time. I mean, some of them have a very high level of standard where it's almost half the road, curb, gutter, sidewalk. And others, it's a high five and thank you for building in North Logan. So as you look through that, we have to decipher through all of those, looking through deeds. They're not on records with plats or anything else like that. And so it's just working with each of the property owners. And each one, like I said, is very different. But as Buzzy brought up, that's something that we should address, and they're looking through it right now. I know they've been looking through it this past week after the planning commission brought it up as well as a high priority.
Yeah, I mean, the thought is when 600 East goes through there with Smiling H and then all the way to Hyde Park, that is going to be a heavily traveled road. And
Yeah.
so I'm really concerned that we don't do that right before we move all these developments through. So
Agreed. And that's something we'll need to look at. Just to clarify, just for the subdivision application's sake, the only section they're responsible for doing is theirs. And if we want to get our timeline aligned, that'll be on the city to make sure we get our ducks in a row. It won't be anything on the developer. So they won't have to wait for us. Or
I heard we have massive funding this year, so we're probably sarcasm. Yeah.
Buzzy's gonna give a big donation.
I'll just add, I attended the planning commission. Emily let me attend for her. And planning commission did a good job vetting the subdivision and gave a recommendation of approval to the council.
I have just one concern, and this is just for all of the developments going forward. I'd love to see the consistency, and just as Alan brought up, one period of time we allowed certain standards, one period of time we didn't have any standards. So going forward and approving for future development, I would love to see a consistency in standards with fences and setbacks and the trails and some open space so that we can maintain some of the feel of what makes everybody want to live here. So I don't want to tell everybody you can't develop your land, but if you're going to develop your land, let's be considerate to what we're leaving behind. So I would have a hard time pushing forward with this tonight, just because we don't have the design standards in place yet that I feel comfortable with. So that's my biggest concern.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's a good point with doing it at the same time. And we are going to be constrained financially, but I think as far as the road goes, that it'd be nice to just not do it patchwork. So I think we're probably ready to vote on this. I would entertain a motion.
I say motion to approve the concept plan with the caveats that were stated.
All right, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Buzzy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. We will move on to consideration of a concept plan for the Beck Farm subdivision, approximately 12.31 acres, located at approximately 2828 North, 1600 East. The proposed subdivision includes 9 lots in the RE1 zone and is being proposed to be subdivided using the density determinant method.
Yes, so I'll work you through this one. This is a unique subdivision. I wasn't in the meeting at Planning Commission. I was out at a conference, so Alan was running point there. If you have any comments from Planning Commission to interject, feel free to stop me. So on this subdivision, it includes several parcels of land here that have been historically owned for a really long time by the Yonker family. And it's the Yonkers who are coming in with this subdivision in a very unique way, with a lot of open space. So part of the proposal at this subdivision, it is in the RE1 zone, but they're not developing all the lots that they could be in this zone. There's 12 acres. They have 9 lots in 2 different phases. And have included an open space park element, even without, say, taking the bonus density as part of it. So it's a really unique subdivision. And the land itself historically has been really a part of North Logan City and has had homes on it for a really long time. So it is a unique location. Alan, if you want to pull up the most recent plan.
That's my big question.
We can take a look there. This one is the park. I think we've got the most recent one in there somewhere.
If you're looking for the park, it's the illustrated.
That one. There you go. This is the one. So we've got the other subdivision that came through recently, Orchard View Estates, Point Pasture, Luce subdivision, the subdivision. So this essentially is 1600 East. There's 3 existing homes. Phase 1 would include 3 lots on 1600 East and a road coming back to 3 more lots back behind there. It would be phase 1. Phase 2 in the future would have an additional 4 building lots. This portion of park here would be looked to be dedicated or donated really in phase 1 with another additional amount of park to be dedicated in the future to expand the size of the park in total. It would be dedicated later or donated later because that way phase 2 will stay at 5 acres for greenbelt in the meantime while they're working on phase 1. So this road is shown coming back here, is shown in a dash line there. In order for land east of the canal to develop, we do have that 750-foot requirement. They wanted to make sure they left options open for the landowner here. This is shown as kind of a future proposed. This is going on as well. This isn't part of the current subdivision, but they wanted to show how a road could go through. Ideally, I think if they had a connection to the south, that's what the applicant would prefer to see rather than a road coming through here and through the park. Initially, we had a road, they had a road drop kind of coming through the middle, but worked with us to kind of rearrange it So the park would be split up quite as much. So, and as far as planning commission goes, I'm not sure if I think it was a positive recommendation, correct? Were there any conditions on that?
There's a positive recommendation, and the biggest questions came up. This subdivision is very unique. This isn't a bonus density. Normally, when a subdivision comes through and you see this amount of parkland, it's a bonus density option in order to get more lots. That's one of the options that we have available within our subdivision methods. But this isn't that method. They're developing the lots at standard sizes and then donating a park on top of it. The park is intended to be more of a legacy park, preserving a lot of the history through this area. A lot of the early residents of North Logan lived and worked on these areas through here, the Becks, the Onkers, several other families. And so the intent is to have more of a legacy park through that area donated to the city, and working with the city collaboratively over time to put that in. Normally, if it's a bonus density, they give a small chunk of land and they have to develop the whole thing entirely before they donate. This is a very unique situation where it's a large chunk of land. And so going through that, just to clarify those items, those weren't big points of conditions. However, those things would all have to be spelled out within the development plan at the next phase. So at this point, the big question is the alignment of the road and the lot layout were the big questions. And they went over those. It did receive a positive recommendation. One thing that's come up is just a question mark regarding this. As this road heads south, one of the points that was brought up by the Development Review Committee was to bring it potentially a little bit further south and make this lot a little bit bigger. But again, that's one of the questions that has come up. And that's the only question from the Development Review Committee, so that there's not a kind of a smaller sliver of land that comes to the city as a park that could be more used as a portion of a lot. But that was the only thing that's been brought up. There was a lot of discussion about making sure these utilities tie in properly. But again, we went over each item. But back to the elements of the park and the road and everything else going into the future, those things would just have to be spelled out in the development plan and especially in the development agreement so that everyone's on the same page. Everyone knows exactly what will happen and spells out who, what, when, why in that development agreement. But at this portion, it's just lot configuration and road layout.
Yeah. And one thing to note, if you want to flip over to the park drawing. So I actually had Hayden Draper, who's been the intern. If you can go down one more, this is existing site. One more page to page 2. No, that PDF, sorry. Page 2. He had drawn a different design with the road in a different location. The idea of this park, and there's a lot of green in there that's not turf grass. It's just to depict kind of the pasture that's there, is to have something a little more passive. And this is taken from the cues that the Yonkers sent over, kind of a history. It's right on the canal, which in the future could be a trail network. So it would be a good location for that. It wouldn't be a soccer field type of park, but maybe have a pavilion, have an orchard, have walking trails, preserve the existing tree groves, pastures, minimal kind of turf grass type of thing. More of a passive park that could connect into some future trail networks was the main idea. This drawing was not really intended to be, this is exactly how it will be built. This is just showing kind of how some elements would be. We obviously would refine this. We wouldn't hold either the city or the developer to this. Like Alan said, it's a little unique in that this would be pretty much donated to the city where it's not a bonus density. So the developer we'd have to look and see what elements we'd like to build or would be useful at first, and kind of work with them on that, including the access up to it. So just to give a picture of what the vision is there, and how it fits into our system. Typically, very small parks are kind of difficult to maintain, but something that's a little more passive in use and connected potentially to our trail system could be beneficial in the future. It's a good spot really for the city.
What would the timing on this be as far as the city's concerned?
It would be city driven, essentially. So in a typical bonus density, this would be built by the developer in phase 2 or phase 1 or whenever. We could kind of build what we wanted to see. If you want to flip back to the aerial, Alan, I mean, potentially There might be a way to have trails installed in the short term that connect up through some of our existing open spaces and have loops that go from there. We don't have trails on the canal in this section currently, so it wouldn't really be a good connector there. We could start out by having a pavilion and a orchard and maybe trails that go up. We do have open spaces. If there's a way we can find to connect through and have some sort of loop, we could do that. So we'd have to explore what it looks like in the near term versus what it looks like potentially in the long term. And it probably would be added to and developed over years rather than all at once, is my guess.
But probably we'd wait for the road to get in. Like that's at least the first step
Right, yep.
with that phase one.
Can you go back to the where it showed phase one? My concern is, have we coordinated this with the Phillips subdivision that we already have on record? Because we just had a misaligned intersection on 8th East. 16th East has just as much or more traffic. And I thought Phillips came out right across the street from the original house.
If you want to flip back to the GIS.
Yep.
Phillips comes in right out here. There's a lot of discussion. So this road comes in over here, I believe right there.
Okay.
And this one would come in up there. So they're offset a lot.
Oh, okay. I'm with you now. I thought this one was coming out next to Dawn's house. You're
Yeah.
actually on the other side of the other house.
Yeah, and we had tried to.
It's further away than what I thought. Okay.
Because it was originally lined up to go right into this house, which was an
Right,
issue. We
right.
wanted to try to push it into this space here.
Okay. So we're far enough that we're not going to have a misaligned.
Yes, we'll need to
That's a
verify
good
that
point.
with Lance and have him make sure that it's outside, because there's a certain distance if it's closer than X amount or further than, so we'll make sure that that's within the right distances. Good
So now
point.
who would be responsible for the park? Is it a joint effort with city and developer or
Entirely city, right?
entirely city?
I mean, yes, legally it would be entirely city. I think as far as the developer is concerned, the Yonkers, obviously this subdivision is being done very differently. And maybe they could speak to it better than I can. But I think there's a strong desire to have this park be part of that legacy and be more of a historical park as part of the Beck Farm subdivision. This area was known as Yonkerville for a lot of years. So we'd want to work closely with them. And I'm sure they'd want to be involved in both how the park developed and potentially in helping the park kind of remain that legacy. So, yeah.
The only
legally,
reason I
no.
mentioned that is a few years back, there's up there on the hill, obviously, as they were selling lots, the communication for whoever was selling the lots was, the city's going to build it, and they were giving a timeline. So the only thing I would recommend is whoever is selling these lots, if the communication is this park is there, but there's not some timeline given, because I think I don't know if somebody's going to make a decision to build on that because there's going to be a park there in 2 years and the city's on the,
Right.
there was some misrepresentation, on the subdivision.
That's a really good.
So I just
point.
say there needs to be a note of that. And I mean, you can't really control the market, but
Right.
yeah, we're going to build a park there, but it's going to be depending on funds and all that. So.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So
We should make sure that's clear.
Would secondary water shares for that park be provided as part of the development agreement?
I know there's secondary water for the property and it's below the canal. We haven't gone through the details on where on the property that will be
Later, yeah.
allocated. I think our intent is not to have this be quite as high of a water use park, but we will want to ensure that we do have secondary to water where we need.
On that, the part that says future park, private open space on the concept plan.
Mhm.
What does that mean? Like they just aren't going to be building on it? Yeah, that future park.
Yeah, so future park, it would be part of the park after phase two, in phase two dedicated.
Okay.
Private open space in the interim.
Oh,
essentially.
okay.
So if by not dedicating all of the land that they intend to for the park, they can save 5 acres.
Okay.
Which allows them to keep green belt and will be very beneficial for tax purposes until they do phase two.
Okay, but long term, the park would extend to that line.
Yes, yep, I'm understanding that correct, right?
Okay.
Yes. The only thing Alan mentioned as well is maybe we work with the developer on this corner piece, which may be a little tricky for the city to maintain. Maybe that can be part of a lot, and that can be just a bigger lot that can be sold, but we can negotiate that and look through it. But yes,
Okay.
So where would the sewer utilities for that way future phase up to the east come down through?
They would go to the
They're gonna
north.
go to the south?
The utilities up here, the intention is to take them to the north out of the,
I'll take them to the north.
Mhm. That's a good point.
Did the Yonkers want to speak to this?
Yes.
Yeah, we're glad to get to this point and to meet with the city council. It's a lot of, to sort of give you some motivation, because we've been asked, why we would do this, but with the subdivision, to the north there, we were asked to coordinate on what a concept could look like, for the Yarker property. And part of that motivation is if we cooperate on a sewer line, as you see coming down, would, economize, two subdivisions, with one alignment. And we're still being told if we're, not really cooperative, that they'll run their line, to the north, and avoid our property. So, that, sort of, brought us into the, look at what could we do, for the city. And so the second part of our motivation is our family really is interested in the park and the legacy, for the Beck, family. It was their farm, hundreds of acres. We're now down to, 30, acres. And in fact, that, that farm extended all the way over to where the city cemetery is, including the cemetery, land, historically. So that's 4 generations, of our family. Now timeline, we figure we've got white hair now. We're figuring we've probably got another 20 years. So it's not like, we're anxious, to have homes, built on this, property in the short term. But we recognize, that if we're going to cooperate on this sewer, if we're going to need to put in, the improvements, for phase 1, well, our big concern right now will be is we got to get the feasibility of, if that, pencils out. Because, with our brother Norman, who's not here tonight, he's elected to take all of his interests below the canal, except for just 3 lots, and put that to the city. Okay, and so with the lots that are remaining, we've got to have enough, income to pay for the improvements. And we would hope the city would, understand we're still figuring that out. Okay. So, this gets us through the concept plan approval. We then go to the engineer, we then go to contractors. We may need to get a developer to help us because we're not developers. We don't want to be developers. Now, we have some children as well that in the future have some interest. So, this isn't that we would look that all these lots are available, to be sold. I mean, we're thinking about, 2 years, 10, 15 years, when some of my children retire, this could be their only opportunity to be, in North Logan. So hence that phase 2, we'll retain that as long as we can in Greenbelt. And, basically, open space and until there becomes a need to, provide some lots for our children, not just, to sell.
I think that's really helpful background, just to know that what kind of motivated this. Does anyone have any questions?
And I'm sorry if this question has been addressed already, but I am forgetting, how far will the road go in phase 1?
It'll go to phase 1.
Oh,
Just-
just that lot, just the solid line. Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify because it was a little.
And on the road issue, I want to be clear too, is though the concept represents the road could go, east, any donation of property will condition that the city would not be able to take that road across the canal. So we need to look at the intern's presentation of what a park could look like in that road. Like I told Spencer when I saw that today, would terminate at the parking. Okay, and so in the future, and we're talking, 10 years out, we're anticipating that there'll be east access, for our brother Norman to be able to, utilize his property, on the east. And that's what that says, future phase up there, future park. That would all be feasible when that 1800 East Road, continues along and connects up. So this has been a big discussion with our family, and those who now, live down on 1600 East, is not to create a thoroughfare, through this little subdivision. We're able to do this with the idea that, there could be something done now, which really, utilizes property below the canal. It's really the prime spot, on the canal, with water rights and green. And so that's a pretty exciting place to start. And then the ability to, and again, largely to our other brothers' credit, the ability to expand, and add to that. And so, you'll be expecting, what are we going to do on our part, and we would be responsible for, the development in the phase one, but we're going to be very interested in what the city would do on their part. Could this really end up being, something that we'd all like, that the community could, benefit from, and then hence, becomes the potential, in our lifetime to make it bigger and better.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
So did I hear right that the family does not want that road to proceed east over the canal?
Yeah,
That's so-
we didn't get a chance to meet with that intern.
Okay.
Okay.
And
so
it looks like it's showing it here too. So
well, and you have to appreciate that, because of the limitations, that the city has on cul-de-sacs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We know that was required concessions and accommodations, on the Orchard View subdivision.
Yeah.
You really would devalue our brother's land if we didn't, if we showed it being cut off.
Fair enough.
So sir, do you know what the length of that is? If it were built just to the park, does that exceed the 750?
I don't
Trying to see the
think it would,
frontage.
but they have links on there, or Alan can take a rough measurement if you want. Yeah, no, they wouldn't stay under that 750 if it was just built for park. I think as Gordon stated, the bigger impact is the land.
Right, east,
Norton's
yeah.
land.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So if space isn't provided, and say a connection doesn't happen further south, it doesn't go to like 2600 or somewhere else. If another connection is provided, and it's still through quite a bit of land to get there, then you wouldn't necessarily need to come across the canal and connect down to 16.
What is our potential though, Spencer? 1800 East, the most likely future connection is where? Is it 2600? It's not, probably not 27, right? Because that's
26
private lane.
Master Plan Road.
So you'd have to come, okay.
There's that. It really depends.
But then that would have to cut
You'd
all
have
the
to
way
go
from
east.
26
Yep.
north.
A lot of landowners have to fall through. They did mention a very long timeline, so you don't know what'll happen in that many years. If there is another access point for that east parcel to get developed, then they have two access points, and we wouldn't worry about that 750. If there's no access point, say to the south, that connects in at somewhere to the road system to keep it from being.
You'd have to. Yeah.
Unless you come across. So I need to show that space so that kind of a worst case scenario, they could take advantage of that.
But that would be an either or thing, right? That would be the only option for developing that land east, is if there were that connection from 16th.
We just want the city
Bridging
to,
across.
understand, because early on when we started talking about this, the immediate interest of the city, I'm talking about the staff, was to create an access east, to 1600, east from East Bench through, and so it's like, I mean, that would just kill the whole thing. Because, and so where we've ended up, we're showing that as conceptually could be needed, but if the city sees that they want to grab an opportunity, to utilize that, then this is not a proposal that's, viable for our family. But.
And I don't think
talk-
that's the threat on the table. I think it's just if your brother, is it Norm?
Yeah.
If he were to develop that land south of the proposed sub, or I guess east and south, that he would need an access
He would,
point.
and he would have the opportunity, and that's why that is really shown part of as the private open space, because it preserves that opportunity. He could pull that trigger if, he needed,
feels
but
like-
he's the really one on board that's really pushing from what we started out at 1.87 acres to, potential of, 7 acre park. And that's where he wants to get in the future. And so I think a concept plan and some long-term planning, the city could look at the whole area. That's what we'd like to look at, but we start with the small part. We see how it goes.
Okay.
Is Norm's property just east of the canal?
No, he
He
has
does
a
have
large
west of
part.
that.
He has a large part on the west. as
Oh,
well.
so it would be ultimately his decision if he wanted to.
Yeah.
But okay.
If he wanted to get.
Where that
access to
road
that.
is, but to keep it in Greenbelt, we're going to have to consolidate the parcels
Gotcha.
and manage it under an LLC that we've got that's called Garden. And so we have there's a lot of details here
Okay.
that we're going to need to work through, and really is part of just whether you approve the concept or not. We're reading really the attitude of the city, and if there's excitement, enthusiasm to keep us, working on this. Obviously, it's got to be a partnership. We're not going to do the whole thing, and we're going to find out what we can do with what we can sell, and so long term, this is sort of getting in a partnership and seeing what we can do that's good for the city.
Yeah, and I think we're in kind of questioning mode, so
No,
don't
no.
misinterpret that to say
No, no.
that we're trying to cross you in any way. I think we're just trying to make sure that you're protected. I'm really excited by the potential of a park here. I think, how you guys have conceptualized that is great, not have the traditional turf park, but have a green space that people can, go on paths through. But any questions? Any
If
other
we're
questions?
just approving phase 1 and phase 2 that is listed, correct? I'm all for it,
It's
honestly.
Just the
It's just-
concept.
Just the
plan.
concept of
So
phase,
then
like,
there'd be more detail.
Yeah,
In
but
the development plan phase where
we're
we
not
kind
doing
of
the
have
future
to
phases, we're
hash
just
out
doing 1
some
and
of
2.
this,
Right.
some of these
We've
details.
got a lot of back and forth yet.
Yeah,
yeah, no,
There'll be a lot of engineering that still needs to be done.
Yeah.
Well, if that's gonna dead end, it'll need engineered turnaround. There's a lot of stuff that'll come later.
I like the idea of the parking. That could be the turnaround, on the terminus. And what you'd like to realize is that, we're only going to be able to, initially build the improvements in phase 1. So what I would anticipate is the city has something probably very simple to, get into the park. I mean, it could actually almost be like a trailhead, sort of.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to be careful when we go through this phase 2 that we don't, disrupt our ability to, keep, grazing, cattle on it, keep it eligible for greenbelt. So those are the kind of things we're going to have to, cooperate on.
okay. I think we probably have enough information to make a motion at this point.
Just so we're just really giving approval for phase 1.
It's
Not
not
phase.
even just that,
We're
it's for
just
the
this
concept
just for
plan.
the concept. Okay.
Yeah.
Love the green space.
So,
I move that we approve the concept plan for the Beck Farm subdivision.
Seconded.
okay, motion by Buzzy, second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we will move on to item 6, consider approval of a draft municipal fiscal year 2023 budget.
So this is kind of unique state code. In the first meeting in May, we're required to approve a tentative budget. And so as you look through this, there aren't a ton of changes from the last time we went through this. I did want to go through one thing though. The summary of like the fund balance for general fund. So your fund balances for all the enterprise accounts are down here, which are fine, which are all in the black. And then as you go up above, we have the general fund balance, 380,000. That should be zero or in parentheses, meaning negative, meaning we balance at that point.
So we're over by 380.
Correct. And as you look through that, some of the things that we've talked about doing though, things we'll talk about in the next couple meetings. We want to shoot for about 200,000. That seems really odd, but that ends up balancing at the end of the year because of our depreciation, our capital, in the expenses that we put away. And also some funds that we end up basically coming in under budget. The department heads take ownership over each of these different departments and they stay within their budgets. And so going through that, some options we do have in front of us. There are several things that we're going to look at doing in the coming months, and the council will be involved in all of these things. There's some proposals that we put together that would help us, and these would just be up for consideration. One of the items would be modifying the emergency response fee slightly by increasing it by $1 a month. That would be one option. That money would come towards the police department. It's been dedicated at this time. It's for emergency services though. Another discussion is regarding property taxes. We'll have a lengthy discussion in the next couple meetings regarding property taxes. It's extremely complicated going over property taxes. It's a tax that could not be more complicated. But the gist of it is, if people are upset about their property taxes, some things that you do need to explain to individuals in the community is that their valuations are supposed to go up every 4 years. For the past few years, they've gone up every year. And the county does that. The county is the one that assesses those. And for the past 4 years in North Logan, they've gone up every year. So the valuations go up. The rate actually goes down to compensate. So you pay the exact same amount to the city each year in your property taxes. That's how it's supposed to function. If the city wants to change that, we have to go through a lengthy process.
So if you do nothing, the rate falls.
Correct.
single
The rate will fall every year, naturally. And so some cities hold the rate, but that's a very large increase. If they call it hold rate, that's an 8 or 9 or 10% increase every year. So just to explain that in general, and then as you look at your property taxes that you pay, North Logan hovers between 13.8 to 14%. It's about 13.8 by right now % of your property tax bill comes to North Logan City. So as your property taxes continue to go up every year, keep in mind that it really can't be that much of North Logan City's fault because we're 13.9% of the entire property tax bill. But what we talk about is that portion. We want to keep property taxes low. North Logan does have historically lower property taxes. Right now, our rate is lower than most of the communities in the valley. We're just below average in the valley, and we'd like to keep it that way. But we do have needs, and we do have obviously a glaring issue right here. And we'll go over that more in the next 2 meetings and how to meet that. We'll look at a smaller percentage increase this year as a proposal. And that's something for the city council to consider and go over the pluses and minuses regarding that. And then several other things. We'll look at administrative allocations. Administrative allocation is the money that comes from enterprise accounts, water, sewer, stormwater, library, those departments, and how much they pay to administrative staff and other office staff to help cover the needs of their departments. So when we talk about needs, human resources, budgeting, when you're looking at water, sewer, and stormwater, the office staff handles all of the billing for those departments, which is a massive undertaking every month. And so a portion of their budgets needs to come out of that. And so that's what we'll look at in the coming months. There's also several other things in this green highlighted box. If you want to go over each one, those are the things we'll be looking at and considering to help us whittle away at that amount to get us down to that ideal section where we're not actually increasing each year. There's a few other items we'll go over, but that's basically the gist of it for this tentative budget right now. But there will probably be a few changes between now and June 1st would be the meeting where we'd have a public hearing regarding our budget. and probably a property tax hearing. Yes, sorry, not probably, we will have a property tax hearing. But that's just under consideration. And then at the meeting after that in June is when a budget approval would have to occur.
And just to give you all a heads up, I will be out of town on that June 1st meeting. So
Good
submit
time
your
to leave.
applications to
Mayor Anderson.
chair that meeting.
Mayor Roger Anderson for the night.
Roger's the closest to your seat, so nominate him.
Have to wear a suit.
I'll
though.
just cut the administrative salary in half and meet up that deficit.
We'll just remove that meeting. We'll wait for you, Mayor. to do that.
Oh, good.
I did think that the property tax overview PDF is very helpful in that folder.
Mhm.
So thanks for sticking that in there for us this year.
That's from Scott, and there's a
Oh,
lot of
Scott.
information in there.
Thanks, Scott.
So as we look at that, that gives estimations of property tax increases monthly, how much it would
Thank you,
affect the
Scott.
average
It's really good.
property owner. That's really helpful information. So just so you know, yeah, it's a very tricky tax. It's odd the way it's set up, and we have to go through all these different meetings to make sure that it's very clear, anything that we intend to do in the coming months regarding property taxes.
Yeah, Scott.
Scott.
Just to remind you, that's my best guesstimate, because the county has not earned the preliminary data yet, so I can't use their stuff.
Also, another reminder, we're working on the cemetery district redistricting. So anyone who's super mad about this that lives in that cemetery district, they're going to be up this year if we can get that done. So
One thing that's amazing about what the mayor just brought up, though, is that most property tax increases when we shoot for these and when we talk about them, it's every few years or very tiny increases each year to even get close to inflation. Which no one's going to get close to inflation numbers right now, but just small incremental increases instead of large increases that some communities do. Massive increases over several years, which just really hurts individuals on a fixed income. And so as you look through those increases, a lot of individuals who are in the Hyde Park Cemetery District pay about $40 to $80 per year in their property tax bill to the Hyde Park Cemetery District. It's a lot of the residents that live along the north end of the community. Aspen Meadows, yes. The community to the west here, yes.
Mahogany Ridge.
Mahogany Ridge, North Park subdivision, they all pay the cemetery district tax to Hyde Park. Anyway, the mayor's been working hard on this and with the county to try and help those residents get out of those boundaries of the Hyde Park Cemetery District, so they're not essentially being double taxed. But most of when we talk about a property tax increase, you're talking about maybe $20 per year, $24 per year. So even those individuals would net a $60 increase in their pocket at the end of the year if we can do this and help them get out of that property tax district, even after a property tax increase. Sorry, long
It's
explanation.
just something to throw out there.
The only thing I'm wondering is newsletter for June, is there a way to like almost put a graphic in that shows property taxes, for example, 1500 school district, 99% of your taxes. North Logan, I mean,
Could we?
I think
put
some
this
people
graphic
need,
in there?
I think sometimes people think when all of a sudden it went up that it's 4 or 5 different entities. It's Cache County. I don't think it hurts to see that. Now, I'm not saying everybody reads the newsletter, but we've at least said that, 13% of your total bill is helping you in the city.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've talked about is being very transparent about this because I want to make sure that people don't think that we're trying to do this behind closed doors without any input. I
Mhm.
want input. I want
Yeah.
people to look at our budget, look at inflation, look at the numbers that we're dealing with, look at the unique property tax laws in Utah, because that's not something I understood before I think I was on planning commission, the fact that the rate self-corrects without any intervention. So I think that's a good goal to have. I think we need to kind of think about what that looks like. Who's the mayor's message? That
I was
is,
gonna write about.
so Buzzy,
the
you've got
pumpkin
that
walk.
covered? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I
You
got
been
it
writing
for
about the
June.
pumpkin walk?
No, it's now on taxes, actually.
I love,
Fuzzy.
I love
Excellent, 'cause
talking taxes.
I got
So,
October, so that's what I get to write about.
I'm gonna steal the
You get
pumpkin
the
walk from you.
pumpkin walk.
Oh my gosh.
Emily, you can,
Can't get enough.
you can write about
Honestly-
garbage.
Cool. I'll talk about our garbage czar. Oh my gosh.
But I think that's a point well taken from Roger.
I am
but
hearing that the mayor is gonna co-write with me in June is what I'm
I
understanding.
will help you
I thought so. Okay.
until
No,
I
I-
leave the country.
Craig brought up a really good point, though. He said, when we do get the numbers, this little graphic that you put out, I would like to blast it everywhere when we have the numbers from the county. Because I just think that seeing it, it's really clear. I think it gives a better interpretation of where we are. And again, anything that can break down some of these numbers and just make them a little bit easier to digest helps everyone. So
I almost wonder, I don't know that we've ever done this, and I know we have a public hearing, but it'd almost be nice to advertise something as a Q&A
Yes.
for taxes. I don't know that we've ever done like a true,
Yeah.
this is a Q&A option versus a public, and maybe we're getting ourselves in trouble, but
is that something we
it
can do?
might be a good chance.
I mean,
actually,
I'm just
educate.
wondering if we can maybe,
We can definitely social media it. I mean,
Is
You
that a
want to
question
And maybe
set that up
Roger
in a
does it
separate
all.
meetings, type of meeting. A public meeting like this it's not constructive to do a Q&A.
Let's do a tax
However,
workshop.
an individual discussion and other things where we can collect information, have dialogue is extremely helpful. And so reaching out and just saying, if you have questions, reach out. If you have concerns or
Well,
options.
when do we come up to talk about it? I think putting it all over the social media and getting, because heck, even with the water rates, I was getting questions from people, and that was extremely helpful to be able to clarify where some of our information was coming from.
totally with you, Emily. I think water rates, taxes, public safety fees,
Mhm.
eventually this is going to catch up. And it's not like haven't been transparent about it anyway. But the truth is most people, until they see it in their bill and they finally realize I'm paying $18 more a month, which is an exaggeration, maybe when it's all said and done, right? That's when we're going to get hit. So we want to, if there's some way we can proactively get in front of this and explain each situation, because I think it's easy to explain when we're with people. That's what I'm finding.
Mhm.
Just having a casual conversation with people like, okay, that makes sense. I understand. But just to see that amount going up, it's really hard to understand all
Well,
the
we-
factors
Yeah,
playing into it.
Do we need
it's
to do the
actually-
more informal city council meetings that Damon was doing last year?
We can do those. When we did those in the past, though, we only had 3 or 4 residents show up.
Yeah.
It was tough. We get a lot of informative dialogue though from just emails or people calling us and asking us questions. And it's actually really, I don't mind it one bit. I don't think the city council should mind it one bit, because as we talk through these things, people realize that the rates and fees and everything else in North Logan, other than our sewer fee. And
Yeah.
our sewer fee isn't the highest in the valley, but it's a little above average. And we have to have it that way to well, one, qualify for certain things and actually pay our bills. But every other fee that we have in North Logan is historically lower. So you look across the board, property taxes are low. Water bills in North Logan, unless you're using a lot of water, are very low. Our base rate is low. Our stormwater fees are low. So as you look across the board, we're below average in most of the different areas. I know that from coming from 2 previous cities in the valley that I lived in, and my fees were much higher in those cities.
I mean, I'm open to considering ways that we can be more transparent and have more of a dialogue, because I think it can get kind of inefficient. I know that I've talked to a lot of people about the water rates, and it's inefficient if I'm talking to 20 separate individuals about their concerns, because a lot of them align, and they're easily dispelled. So I'm open to suggestions on that. I think we also have to make sure that we aren't here for 2 hours getting screamed.
Well, the one idea is if you have the public hearing and then they know that there's another day scheduled, and I know it puts another meeting on us, but if you have somebody concerned resident up there during the public hearing, they could know that they could come 2 days later this night, and there'll be these people here with this slide or whatever, and then it could be discussion. And then that way they feel that they're heard, because you're gonna, you have all types. You're gonna have some like, okay, like no taxation, and then they can,
Taxation stuff, yeah.
Don't you remember we did that? What was that for? We set up different stations here.
We've done that with 2 different subdivisions that were controversial. We set up stations where we could answer questions in here. And it was more just not answering questions. We were just writing down their concerns.
Probably one of the most successful events I've seen us have in the last 5
Yeah.
years was something like that. We got a big turnout. was very cordial. You know, and maybe we could all take an area that we focus on. To help.
I think we could do
explain.
that, given that this is like, there's gonna be ultimately 3 hearings, right?
Mhm.
On this. So I think we could have that at any given point in between those.
I like it.
So
I'd love to see
is that
that.
something that you think we could set up, Alan? Like just
Would you like to see that?
Huh.
Even if
It's
we
settled.
came a half an hour before our city council, because if we have a separate meeting, does that then, if all of us are here, does that have to be seen as a
Is
It's a
that
public
all?
meeting.
public meeting?
Well, and
That's
it's-
fine.
So
Notice it and
notice it, yeah.
Well, and put a huge, I mean, just huge push to encourage as many people, because I know people are reaching out to probably all of us in various ways. That it just being able to encourage them is like, tell everybody that we're doing this, you know. I think it would just be awesome to see if we can.
Okay,
yeah.
let's
too.
continue that dialogue. I don't think there's a huge urgency to that, given that we won't take action till when is that, Scott?
Second meeting in June, so it'd be the 15th.
No, but I'm saying when's the final
Like decide to
truth and taxation
increase.
hearing?
August.
So we have between now and August.
You have to set your cap, the second city council in June.
That's a big one.
The-
Yeah.
Reduce it, you can't go higher.
Okay.
Okay.
Weather might be good enough to do it outside.
Well, I think that'd be great. I think we could even
Who
say
knows? It'll probably
do the business and then, because we've done that before, right? The kind of council on the corner thing.
Yeah.
So we could maybe do a formal meeting and then maybe do a little bit of council on the corner, even just out here.
That would be great.
Yeah.
So, okay. So Alan, typically would we approve this draft municipal budget at this point?
Just a tentative approval.
okay.
Approval of a tentative budget.
Okay,
Okay.
I'd consider that motion.
I'm voting no. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Wait.
Motion to approve a tentative municipal budget for 2023.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay, motion by Emily, second by Joni, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries.
Okay.
Thanks for that helpful input. I think it's good to just make sure that we're talking about this. We now need to
take this one?
convene as an RDA.
Make the motion that we reconvene as the RDA.
Okay,
Second.
motion by Craig, second by Buzzy, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. So we will consider approval of a draft redevelopment agency budget for fiscal year 2023.
I'll make the motion that we approve our tentative budget for the RDA.
The agenda.
Oh.
I skipped the
You
agenda.
guys are
I
flying.
appreciate the
you're too
effort, Craig.
fast.
We're behind.
We are. Okay, so Craig, I'm gonna assume that was a motion
That was a
to
motion to approve the budget
the agenda.
or the agenda.
I'll second the
Okay,
agenda.
second by Buzzy, all in favor?
Aye.
Now you're
Any
up.
opposed? All right, that motion carries. We have a motion by Craig
I'll
to
make the motion we
approve
approve the RDA budget.
the RDA budget.
Second.
Second by Buzzy again, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. I would
Motion
entertain-
we move
okay.
back to
Thanks, Marie.
motion that
Okay,
we
Buzzy motions
Thank you.
to reconvene as the
city council.
city council.
Second.
Second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. Good luck with the
Marie?
minutes,
Good
Marie.
luck with those minutes, huh?
Should we-
All right, we'll move on to item 8. Consider approval.
At least we speak
welcome,
into our
Marie.
mic.
There's got to be a record there. Consider approval of an agreement authorizing an annexation ordinance passed by Hyde Park City.
Okay, I'll give a little bit of background on this, just so everyone's up to date. Does everyone know where the beautiful new Hyde Park is that everyone thinks is in North Logan?
Yes.
That's why I was late. That's where the party was.
Okay, they've done a fantastic job.
Good.
Coming up here along 3100 North, you see a boundary line. It's really hard to see. Maybe you can see it in the map,
Mhm.
but you see this line right here. This is all Hyde Park right here. Then this boundary line comes right here. And then this is all North Logan. So this chunk and everything to the east of that is North Logan. We have a boundary line agreement that's about 40 years old with Hyde Park. And they tried to set up was a logical boundary between the communities where they would annex to over time. So all of this was county in between North Logan and Hyde Park in the past. And over the years, each city has annexed to a specific line. That line, when 3100 North went in, per the agreement, the north half was supposed to go to Hyde Park. The south half was supposed to come to North Logan. And hats off to the city councils at that time, 40 years ago, for guesstimating where that line would be, because it's actually really close to where it can be. But they were off in one regard. The one regard that they're off on is sewer. So we can't really sewer. We could, but it'd be nigh impossible. We'd have to pump it. We can't really sewer this area right along the edge of 3100 North. There was a sewer line put in the road in 3100 North. It's the Hyde Park sewer line when we did this. And so these parcels right along 3100 North would have to sewer into that. In our many discussions with Hyde Park, the future boundary would actually be somewhere along this line. So see this line right here. But that's determined by the property owners. If they're in county now, we're not going to force them to come into either city. However, one of these property owners here wants to annex or wants to subdivide this little chunk right here, which has already been recorded at the county. And they want to annex into Hyde Park so that they're able to develop immediately. Now, this isn't about fighting over boundaries. This isn't Russia going into another country. We're not fighting over anything. It's really just sitting down and saying, what's the best option for the residents coming into each of these homes right here? What works out the best? And so the reason I bring up both of those issues is because long-term, in the next 4 or 5 months, we're going to have to sit down and redo these agreements. These are old agreements, but we'll have to redo the maps and redo the agreements for everything. That's not what we're coming for before the city council tonight for. What we're doing is Hyde Park has already passed an ordinance. They've already gone through all the city council, options with the county to formalize this annexation of just this little parcel right here into Hyde Park, because that's the immediate need. And so this is kind of new, this is kind of unique. The only thing that the city council has to do is look at this resolution, which is essentially just an agreement approving what they have done. And that's really what's under consideration. It's just approving that little chunk that goes into Hyde Park as opposed to the agreed upon North Logan.
Okay. Any questions before we make a motion? All right, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the agreement authorizing annexation ordinance passed by Hyde Park City.
All right.
Second.
Second by Craig, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. Lastly, consider approving the recommendations from the Logan City Fire Department for 2022 fireworks restrictions.
So, thank you, Mayor, Council. It's that time of year where the legislative body for the cities have to turn in their fire restrictions for the year. They're technically supposed to be in by May 1st to the county. The county then submits them by June 1st. So it is difficult from a planning perspective to determine where boundary lines should be. But as we know, the last 2 years ago was fairly catastrophic for the state of Utah. The governor has already declared drought conditions, state of emergency for Utah already this year. I mean, it is nice that we're getting rain. However, spring rain just means more taller grass that can dry out in the summertime. So, you know, we're still cautiously being very cautious about predictions. We have in the Logan City lowered or furthered our restriction down to 12th. We haven't recommended necessarily any changes for you unless that's something you deem necessary to adjust your boundaries. We have to base them a little bit on historical data over the last 5 years. 2 of the last 5 years have to give us some kind of, but the fact that we're in our second year of drought certainly allows for some further restriction if you feel it's necessary.
I wonder if you consider 12, because, you know, the thing we said with our water, I mean, we've always gone to 16th, right? Nothing
Right.
about 16th. The issue I have, we've said, is transportation. So if you hit any of those hills on fire, you're not getting water. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely makes it difficult. I mean, you have a challenge, 3,100 and all that bench area, and just depending on where the access point is for that general area and that one way in, one way out scenario, certainly a challenge for us. So in that perspective, I don't know if you have, did you create a map, Greg, for this one or no?
No, we just had last year's. We're just gonna use last year's map.
Yeah.
But
You have that?
the historic closure is from the north boundary to the south boundary along 1600 East.
Yeah.
One of the reasons it's along 60 days, and just to comment on that, and Roger brings up a really good point too, is the area below the canal. So you kind of look at this and you can see a distinct change. It's very green below the canal through this area right here. I hate to just point this out point blank. But then the area becomes up here of a concern, but this is actually county property through here. So that's one thing that's also a level of complexity. That's the reason it's always been 16th in the past, because everything's below the canal until you get into county property.
Yeah, and 16th is a little easier road to put out to the public to explain where that is. It's so difficult a lot of times to educate the public on that. Along the canal will be a little more difficult to put that out across. And so we try to traditionally put it down the road.
And we do.
It's more
And we
recognizable.
do signage, correct, Greg, here, just
Yep,
like
we
we do in
sign
the
all
city.
along
So
there.
Yep.
on these
it
sides.
makes it difficult to do it along the river.
Yeah,
But it
makes
should be based on the statute. It says it has to be a very
Distinguished.
distinguished
Yeah.
markings or boundaries.
16th is a straight shot.
I'm assuming that we can reevaluate, like, this is our anticipated fireworks restrictions, but we could reevaluate that if
Make
the
them
situation.
stricter.
Well,
worsens.
yes and no, but you know the process. If by the time we decide that you need to make those boundaries, we can't do it. I can't do it arbitrarily. You have to do it as a legislative body. You have to notice it. So that can be a delay in time if seasonal. So we try to, I mean, I hate to say it this way, and I said it in the Logan meeting. We try to be as restrictive as we possibly can, and then depending on the time of year, we just enforce a little less.
Okay.
So in January is definitely a different enforcement than July 24th.
But your recommendation is that 16th east from the
Yeah,
north
at
to the south
least,
boundary.
at least at that point, yes.
Yeah.
The
We
only
have to
thing-
try to guess what it's gonna be like around the 24th, because that's our worst case.
And when
scenario.
you say at least, what would the other consideration be?
The other consideration, we go down to 12th,
Okay.
but I agree with Alan. There's probably a portion of your city where 12th is probably okay, but there's another portion of that city where maybe not so much. The further north you go, the probably less applicable. Now, as far as a county property, I believe the county has the ability to arbitrarily just ban fireworks differently than the cities.
It'll go to the state. The state puts out those restrictions on unincorporated areas.
Okay, that's
And,
right.
they haven't done it yet, but they will.
They usually shut it down for unincorporated county.
I would love just to set that precedence just for first responders. And I live on 1600 and 2300. So I've seen the fire that started from someone firing a rifle just up by Hyde Park. And that could have been devastating. But fortunately, that got put out relatively quickly for what it was. So my feeling is I'd love to keep you guys safe. You don't need to be climbing up in the mountains trying to put out fires that could have been prevented if we kept it away from the areas that are, to me, the most dangerous for you
Yeah.
and
I
for
mean-
all of us. I mean, there's one road up there for most of those people to get in and out. That's just not feasible for you.
We have one with a chain though.
Yeah, even
I
without
think,
that.
I think it's 16th a
enough.
given. I think it's just whether we be
Yeah.
more
Move it to-
restrictive.
I
I
mean-
would favor sticking with 16th. I think
That's-
I think maybe when
Continuity.
12th goes through that we could always consider it. But I think it would be a really difficult education aspect if we change it from
Yeah.
16th.
I just make one comment. You read about Colorado, you're reading about New Mexico now, whole towns being evacuated.
California.
You have
Oregon.
shootings allowed up on Smithfield. I mean, to me, I think obviously it's finally on, I think people of all people where they see the drought conditions and they read articles, if you were going to change it, they're going to be more understanding.
Yeah.
And most of the people who are negligent, I mean, I know it's, but I guess to me, just for 2 hours of entertainment of blowing up money, Are we, I don't know.
Well,
I-
the reality is whether it's green space or not, if the wind conditions are right, green doesn't stop
Doesn't matter,
anything.
yeah. I think,
And
you know,
that's
I'd almost rather be
unfortunate,
more
but it's-
restrictive. That sounds
Yeah.
bad.
I guess
but-
I just don't, you know, having been here for 20 years, 16th East has always made a lot of sense. It's easy to market that street, which has been a big deal to me. If we're going to go 12th, I don't see why we wouldn't go 4th or we wouldn't go 2nd, to be quite honest with you, because I think the risk is the same. And the biggest
I'm
concern really
gonna
to Chief Hennick's
write
point
that in the
is-
newsletter.
Yeah. But you know, these fields that are green, if we have some dire situation where these things flip to yellow by July 24th, we're in trouble across the entire city.
That's what- yeah.
So I don't see any reason to, you know, just call out between 1200.
What's happened in the past? Because has there been just a flat out ban on fireworks
Well, last year
before from
was
the state?
Last year was the first time that a city tried to, or actually pulled off a full ban. That was Salt Lake City. That was unprecedented because there was a lot of attorneys throughout the city that believed that that wasn't legal.
Fireworks, right?
They make
Uh,
too much- they make
enumerated
too
in the
much money
Constitution?
on- They make too much money on sales.
Exactly.
gonna see 'em do
Well,
that.
it's not
It's like the
about a
Third
constitutional
Amendment.
right. It's more about
I
just
know.
the sales
Just the
drive a
sales
lot of
tax.
that.
I get it.
And part of that is that Utah is a pretty, how do we call, say liberal state when it comes to aerial fireworks, because that is
I don't
the
know that I would
challenge.
ever use that word.
Yeah,
I
I
know.
don't.
But it's true. It is true when it comes to fireworks. They
Right.
certainly are on.
I
they're
would
not
call
on
it
the
a don't
conservative
tread on
side.
me state.
Yeah.
So
This
any
is going
restrictions.
south quick.
I just,
I mean, not in a
I get
political
it.
sense.
I
in
get
a
it.
literal
Our
sense.
fields are yellow in July and we leave them that way.
Right.
We cut them down low. We water them once a month. So I know for the last 5 years, they don't stay green
Right.
and we don't burn so that we don't burn our neighbors. So I
I
like.
mean, hopefully there's some common sense in this. And I think that's the balance that you have to strike, is that how much do we have to actually legislate this?
This feels like it's
Well,
actually going to go to a
it's-
vote, a split vote.
It's super unfortunate that the state created a statute that limits our ability to make changes on the fly,
Yeah.
because it
That
is
is
so volatile.
unfortunate.
But it was some bad actors that caused the legislators to do that, and therefore we're living by these kind of difficult, like planning in May, in
Right.
April rather, for what it's going to be like in July is nearly impossible,
And it's kind of hard when we have had such a wet spring.
right?
It's hard to, I don't think that we can assume that's how July
It
will be.
Exactly.
I mean, I wish July would be like.
I
like,
would
wish
take
could-
rain every day. I'll go on record on that.
You can move to
Just-
Oregon.
Pacific Northwest, I guess is for me.
Um,
I don't know. I kind of agree with Roger in the sense of I sort of prefer going more conservative, but I do see Buzzy's point in that I do think it would be very difficult to. People know that it's 16th East.
I think this.
I don't know.
Like you want to see uproar. It's not taxes.
It's-
It's
oh,
not
it's
anything.
this?
It is
Great. Awesome.
fireworks. And I don't want to make a decision based on fear of
Well,
people's response. But I do think that we can hopefully count on people to not burn up their own.
I'm
fields.
okay with leaving it along 16th East for now because of our historical records. Now, if I could show you 5 fires as a result of fireworks between 12th and 16th that we had last fireworks season, we would be having an entirely different
Okay.
conversation.
Sorry,
But I
you're
don't-
saying
I
there
don't have
weren't
the
those
historical
fires.
Data to back up the change.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'm kind
then-
of taking great.
That's a fair statement.
Yeah.
So I would entertain a motion. I'm excited to see how this goes.
Roger. Let's have some no's tonight.
Yeah.
I will abstain from it because it actually is my office that does that.
I
Okay.
completely
I-
disagree with that abstention, but
I'll move that we approve the recommendations from the Logan City Fire Department for the restrictions. Just to be clear, the agreement does say 1600 East. So for
Okay.
those that don't feel that way, that is what the agreement is stating.
all
You
right.
also put in your motion that you live above.
I
16.
second
And
that.
for the
Motion
record, I live
by-
east of 1600 East.
Motion by Buzzy. And that's funny. I think the two that are speaking out the most against extending it both are going to be affected the same way.
I just get nervous when you're in city leadership
I
and
do
you're in that
too.
situation where you are evacuating a whole city. And it would be one thing if it was a lightning strike, but when you're dealing with idiots below
Fireworks.
age lighting them.
Yeah.
you know.
I-
It's
Craig
just-
makes a really
It's
good
a
point
point
though,
taken.
when he doesn't have I mean, that, I
Okay.
think that's, I don't know.
I'm
I
gonna-
second the
I'm gonna
motion.
call for a vote on this and we can do another motion if we need to. So Emily, are you still seconding?
I'm still seconding it.
Okay, so all in favor of 16th East?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No. Nay. Horsey.
Joni, I
Joni
didn't
has-
catch. Did
Oh, I
you
said
vote?
aye.
She said I.
Aye. Okay, so
Okay,
that
3-1.
motion passes for
I can't
16th
say
East.
the whole city can't have it,
And-
but maybe if we had somebody really exciting come into town, the whole town goes to that spot to watch fireworks and
Like
we
Elk Ridge,
only have to worry about one place.
Well,
I
and
know, that's what I like
Roger
to see
preserves the
someday.
right to say, I told you so at any given
No,
time.
Yeah, that's
I
what
just bring it up because it makes you think.
But
I think like, I do like how you say we can revisit it.
You
So I have
can.
no problem doing an outright ban and whoever wants to say whatever, but I mean, we'll take the conditions as they come.
If we
You
get a
certainly
fire
can
trouble-
I
readdress
agree.
it. If conditions get worse over the next couple of months, you can
And-
certainly redress it.
And we ask you, Chief Hannick, to help us monitor that because you and Craig have different eyes on that, you know, on making that judgment call. I'm with Roger that I think that that's our responsibility is to make sure that we're putting in restrictions that keep citizens safe. So,
And we did make a concerted effort last year. I mean, obviously, we, asked the PD help us, law enforcement help with the enforcement and ticketing as, for violations, but just the presence. We had our crews out there driving neighborhoods. That presence alone usually deters a lot, especially the bad actors.
I was going to mention that last year was the most enforcement I've ever seen.
Yeah.
and I'm assuming
that,
that we're not, even
not-
if
not-
we're, there are
wanted-
restrictions other than, like, you can't just point a firework at a field of grass, right? I mean, there's some common sense restrictions. Is that true?
Yeah,
No?
yes and no.
Because I'm the Asian
E-
Go ahead.
Even if you're in a area where they're allowed and you cause a fire due to your
You could be
fireworks system,
culpable.
could sustain the cost of that fire
Yeah.
and other things. So
Maybe that's what we just.
Yeah,
need to push out.
irresponsible lighting of fireworks and causing a fire or damage to a home certainly has liability for that
Okay.
individual.
Well, and maybe as that approaches, we can do some public education kind of
Okay.
stuff. So if you could help us with that, that'd be really
Absolutely.
great. Because I think, it's helpful to just have some common sense things that we say for everyone's own good, you
Yep.
know? Okay.
Yeah, this newsletter is
Thanks,
good.
Chief. Appreciate it. And thank you, council, for the comments. I think that's helpful. All right. We will move on to the city council work session items. Lessons learned at the Utah League of Cities and Towns Conference. Go ahead if you want to start with that.
I don't know if you want me to start or any of the other members. I can go over a few things.
Why don't you start, Alan, if you've had those compiled and then,
I guess we didn't email you. Whoops. We did
yeah, I
ask for
know.
email, huh?
I
But
forgot
I,
to.
I didn't go, so I was the only one who,
I saw your request for an email and.
I
Sorry.
shared
I'm happy
I'll
to.
share those.
I'm happy to start. I think one of the biggest things that I learned is that if you share on your private Instagram or private social media, you share anything, or if you're tagged, which Buzzy, this applies to you.
Yes, it
I
does.
tagged Buzzy in my post. You are then making your personal account a First Amendment zone. It is a public zone that you cannot moderate comments within. So,
You're supposed to archive too, remember?
yeah, you're supposed to archive and also post kind of your rules for that space. And I think we're going to be, well, that's maybe the first thing we'll have the interns do is add a policies and procedures that we pin at the top of our North Logan City page. And I can work on that with them. But that was, you can't delete comments. You just can't. So that was interesting.
Want me to go?
so
Yeah.
I'm curious because I wasn't there and you did tag Buzzy, which is this is a good example. Does that mean for just that post that you
No.
tagged him in, it's for all of
Forever
it?
and always,
Ooh,
Buzzy's
sorry,
account.
Buzzy.
And have you seen
I-
my social media? Account?
No, I
I
should
don't
look
even
at
know if
them.
we're friends.
I don't think we're friends actually
We are.
either. Okay.
I don't even. I don't think I'm on
Anyway,
there.
yes, you
No, I
can't,
mean-
you can't regain that control,
it's
Emily.
done.
Did you
You
tag
can't
me?
delete it.
No.
You
Okay,
can't
good.
delete posts. It's crazy. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I think that it was interesting because it was
I'm trying to
West
think if I have
Jordan.
anything in my
It was West
private.
Jordan's PR person that was talking about it. And
Mm.
I think they took it a little bit to the extreme. I think that they like to the point where there was a nude man posting videos of himself and they felt reluctant to take that down.
What?
That's not my social media. She's talking about. my
That
story.
was
No, that was very clear that it was not you, Buzzy.
Buzzy is asserting his right to free speech.
I mean, but we could put a policy of like, don't we, I don't know, aren't we allowed to take things down that are sexual
Vulgar.
content or overtly threatening? I don't
West
know. Like,
Jordan.
are we allowed to
Overly
have?
profane.
But-
not just
but
profane,
based on their-
overly.
Well,
But-
what qualifies as overly profane?
That's the
Because
problem, right?
And
there.
it
naked
is the-
photos.
I
I
don't
mean,
think we need to worry about this much because at the city level,
Right.
we've only had one post that was even profane, period.
Okay.
And we removed it. So
I will say this though, I am curious on this. What does it mean about DMs? Because I've gotten more than one that I've blocked people on. Am I allowed to do that on my public
That's
account
a-
or not?
Good question. I don't think so, because that's not a public space. Like
Okay.
you're not restricting their First Amendment rights.
I'm just
in
restricting them
their-
from sending dick pics. Okay, that's fine.
Council, can I just remind you not
Excuse
to
me,
say
sorry.
any words like Emily just said
Sorry about
over
that.
the public hearing minutes? But Marie, could you please put that in the actual minutes?
Oh
Thank
my
you.
gosh, I'm so sorry. I said that out loud. Woof.
yeah.
Maybe we cover that in the newsletter.
So I cannot restrict you from saying that, Emily. I would advise you
Excuse
not
me,
to do
I'm
that
not going
ever
to say that
again.
again. That was
Okay.
thinking out loud.
Maybe I'll
Um,
take this a different direction.
Yeah,
Is
so
that-
Buzzy, let's hear what you had to say.
I think let me regain my composure for a minute. Probably the biggest thing I took, and I'm trying to think how to put this on not in a political way, which is difficult. We had a session regarding, especially for those that weren't there, we had a really good session that spoke about Utah League, what they sponsor, what they don't like when the state legislature gets together. And they take all the bills and they look at them and they say, we approve, we don't approve, we negotiate. And it turns out we have leaders in our area that are often at odds with what we would go vote for in a city council hearing. So for example, and I'm learning this more and more I go, that our most effective state leaders are those that have served in this capacity, because they see it at a micro level rather than just jumping into a macro level and then implementing policy that hurts the city's ability to get certain things done. So we all sit up here for the benefit of the people that we truly believe live here, right? We make decisions that are hard, that we think can benefit the community hundreds of years. But that's sometimes at odds with who are representing us at the state level. And so I would just say the biggest lesson I learned is that it's our responsibility to make sure that we vet those folks, that we share that with the people that trust us in these roles and let them know who we support. So I'm not sitting here not supporting anybody, but it's another aspect I didn't really look at until this year. And it has affected us. We've actually seen some bad policy come out in the last couple of years that handcuff us as city for what we can do for the betterment of the people that live here. So that's a pretty deep thought compared to Facebook, but that struck me this session in particular.
Yeah.
So what's our best bet to encourage more communication between state and local? Did they have strategies for us?
First thing I thought of is I know who my state representatives here and how many times they've been in this meeting, how many times we've seen any of them in city council. And I'm not talking about currently elected, I'm talking about previously elected. There's no single person I'm pinpointing,
Yeah.
but it's a travesty that we don't see folks like that here at the city municipal level before they go and represent us at the state. And I learned that this year, and it's been eye-opening, and local government is the most important. What we do here, in my opinion, is the most important thing there. Whether you're the governor, you're, a state rep, or you're a state senator, it all happens here at this level. The most important things that we do for the people that live here. So that's the question I would ask is, as I go and we have to vote this year for some of these midterm candidates, I'm going to ask, have you been to a city council meeting? When was the last time you were? Have you come and seen the stuff we're dealing with? Have you heard about our property tax issues and the funding? Have you heard about eminent domain and why we have to do this sometimes? And, and we didn't put them on the spot. But the most important thing is to educate our friends and neighbors that don't necessarily I didn't spend a lot of time looking into it, and it took being on the council to finally start realizing that stuff matters.
Yeah.
So.
Point taken. I think that's a good one, Buzzy.
Yeah.
I too have seen that reality, when we're trying to kind of advocate for our city, and that can be in opposition to what some of our leaders are doing. It's just the unfortunate thing. I think maybe the most important thing is to to make sure that we are communicating so that,
Yep.
so they know where, there's some legislation that went through last minute that really tie our hands in North Logan. And, I'm not pointing my finger at
Financially,
anyone
right?
specifically, but, and, I think the league does help a lot with that because typically they're advocating for us, but I think after that, it's important that they understand how those implemented policies really affect us. Because it's easy to talk about it from a high level and to say, in a perfect world, this is how there would be no taxes. There would be, we'd all work out our differences without intervention by the courts, and all of that, but that's not the reality. So.
One thing that's tough, and to speak to the Buzzy and the mayor's point there, in the past 4 or 5 years, I've just watched it, is in the early stages of the session, you'll see a lot of bills coming out of like the Salt Lake County, Utah County, Davis counties, and they're all extreme. I won't say all, 80 to 90% could be detrimental to a city. I mean, they could be damaging to a city. Our ability to even work, govern, provide maintenance. I mean, anything related to development, residential development, it could handcuff a city to the point where we would be in a lot of trouble, and it would really hurt us from a myriad of ways. And I watch that each year, 89% of them, and they get weeded out. They get weeded out by city council members talking with their state representatives. They get weeded out through the Utah League. Utah League goes to bat. They literally just, they go to bat on 50 to 100 bills every year that they have to shoot down. And the more contact we have with those state reps, the better, because those things get shot down. And as Lindsay pointed out, one of the things, just economic development strategies. We went over several things at the Utah League, or at the city managers conference, which was right before the Utah League. They talked about this a little bit more. But like House Bill 151 that curtails and limits what cities can do with retail incentives, kills medium-sized to small cities. It's like North Logan is the prime example of a city that will kill as far as economic development goes. And
we
that
just got that in place too. That's
somehow
just
that went
killer.
through. It's been brought before the state legislature for 3 or 4 years, shot down cold. It didn't even make it through committee the past 3 or 4 years. So it got passed this year, and it really hurts a smaller city beyond belief. So hopefully in the future that changes, but it emphasizes the importance of having contact, making sure that they're aware of these things, how damaging things can be to a city if they do pass them, and letting them know kind of some unforeseen consequences if they haven't been in the role of a city council member or mayor at that
Right.
point.
Well, I'm just thinking out loud, maybe it doesn't hurt for us to in some way as a council invite them. I know that maybe naturally like to come, but maybe we invite them to come once a quarter, or we have somehow communicate, or how are you hearing us? I mean, I don't know, we can start some dialogue. I mean, they're about to go through voting in June. So that's a good way to, you can ask your 2 people running for state rep or for county. I mean, all those things, how they're going to see different things. I mean, you got a couple months here where you could get some opinions in, or how they see things. But
It's a good idea.
It's a wonderful idea, because then they're connected to us. And if they do take anything back to Salt Lake, then they'll talk to us about some of those issues first, hopefully. Thanks, great.
All right. Joni, did you have anything specific?
I just loved exactly what Buzzy shared. I think, that was eye-opening for me too. Probably the thing I got out of that was the connections and feeling like I now know who I can contact for support from the league. I also have other city council members and city employees that, a couple of them reached out afterwards and just, invited to lunch and stuff, so we could talk about some issues that are similar. And so I'm hoping to get some great feedback from just networking with the people that were there and building those kind of relationships. It's great for future connections for our city. So
Absolutely.
thank you for North Logan for sending us.
Alan, what else?
Just a couple of things. There was a massive portion on the city managers conference that talked about employee recognition and HR strategies. We'll probably implement a lot of those. So we'll start looking at those in the coming months. Water conservation was huge. They talked about that the entire time. Water conservation in different cities. Certain cities have done a fantastic job in looking through them. Saratoga Springs, Spanish Fork, They're about 20 years ahead of the curve, 10 years ahead of the curve in the things that they're doing. And surprisingly, North Logan, the past 4 or 5 years, we have the most comprehensive tiered water rates in the state. But we are up there with them. The only difference is a lot of these larger cities started doing a secondary water system, which has its pluses and minuses. It's extremely expensive capital to put it in. And so if you're growing from basically no city like Saratoga Springs, it was a possibility. But there's actually cities that are older in our valley that are trying to get rid of their secondary water system because it costs them so much money to run and operate. But North Logan has massive secondary water systems in our community, and it's working with them and working hand in hand. And we've done that probably more than we've done in the past, the last few years, to work with the secondary water systems to make sure our policies line up with their policies and that we're both encouraging the same type of conservation. Metering's obviously huge right now. If companies are looking into metering, they've got to do it in the next couple of years, because this year there's a 70% reimbursement for metering for the next 1 to 2 years. And then it trickles down each year. The rebate is less and less and less. And then it turns into fines in 2030. And so just working with them to go over that. And I think you guys have hit on everything else that we went over at that conference. Great networking opportunity, great way. We're not alone in asking them about things that we're looking into. So yeah, thanks to all the council members for those items.
How many bags of swag did you end up with?
I don't know. I just make sure we get our money's worth because the city's sending me down there.
I think you did.
Then you can give it to the employees like throughout the
did.
year.
I brought in a bag for the employees. It was like Christmas time.
Trick or treating.
He was very careful and quiet about how he did that as well.
All right, so we will move on to update on strategic directives from the city council.
I'll just open this up really quick. Hopefully that's still open. So if you go to strategic directives, each quarter we kind of just look at some of the things that we're doing. And I want to just give you a brief update on some of these items. So as of the mayor, several city council members, your guys' emphasis, a lot of the newer city council members, sorry, older council members, you guys brought a lot of these things to light regarding just communication, making sure that we're reaching out to the public, making sure they're informed. And I think we've hit the nail on the head in several areas. We still have a little ways to go, but I think we've made a ton of progress working with the mayor, working with the PIO, working with interns to do that. And I think it's fantastic. Newsletter, we've changed a few things. We've updated those. Citizen advisory committees, that's one area where we probably need to step it up a bit and look at that. That's my fault. I need to get with the mayor on those. Those are advisory committees to the mayor.
Absolutely not your fault. We are not at a loss of things to do.
And we'll get into that. I mean, right now it is extremely busy with everything going on. We have committees. It's just some of our older former committees that we need to look into. Yeah, a lot of the things we have accomplished, economic growth, the wheels are in motion right now. There's a lot of things at work right now that I think will bear fruit in the next year. So that's fantastic. City Center, there's some discussion, and Spencer will bring that before the City Council and Planning Commission in the next discussion. Some suggestions based off new House Bill 151, where we're going to have to modify a few things regarding our incentives, how we do our city center, what's the product that we want. Trails, we've made progress, but we've got a long way to go in that regard to get some of these plans in place that were created by the what's that called? The transportation plan, active transportation plan that the intern put together over a 2-year period, working with Spencer's department, the City Council, the Planning Commission. That's a fantastic guide for where we need to go. So we've got a lot of different goals here that we worked on. But we've got some ways to go to accomplish the rest of them. But I just want to get your feedback. If there's any other focus or any other shift, anything you want us to particularly emphasize the next few months, but maybe we're not hitting on.
I'd still like to see signs out for city council, just to see if we could get more interest in these meetings. Didn't we talk about?
What's that face?
No, I thought we did talk about it.
We talked about it, and if
That'd
we
be
just
great.
put out a few signs
All
around the
right.
community.
Shoot it down, it's fine.
I don't know, like really though,
Nobody
Buzzy, I'm
wants to
trying to, I wonder, I'm not opposed to that, but people know about our
Yeah,
meetings.
that's true.
Kind
and-
of. I have to look at my calendar. I wouldn't mind a sign just at least in front of the library a couple of days beforehand. That would just be the reminder.
Yeah, I think the people that do know, the thing that we do that we didn't do in the past is we send out parlance. So if the people are going to be affected by a subdivision or other things, we're the only city in the state that does that. Is we send out a parlance and everybody knows the day after that. Like they have no excuse if they do not know. And so we've sent those out and said, hey, heads up on this if there's something coming up. They have it in the newsletter every month. And so if people are interested, when I talk with my neighbors, I say, there's an item coming up. Are you going to come to this? And I mean, hundreds of people I've talked to about this and they say, yes, if it pertains to me or if I need to be there, if there's something I can help out with, absolutely. But they basically have indicated if there's something that doesn't pertain to me or if I don't need to be involved, I really don't need to attend those meetings.
I don't
that
think
point.
it's ignorance about when they are. I don't. And I don't know how to address that because I mean, one of the things that I've hoped for is that if there is something big, that we try to notify the people affected.
Maybe that's more appropriate is when it's something.
Well, I
A
would,
little more
if it's
significant.
big, I want to know, even if it's on this
Yeah.
side. That's just me
Well,
personally.
There's always,
Mhm.
there's always the argument that no news is good news. Maybe an empty room means that we're doing a good job.
Yeah, the things
That
that
tends to be
No,
true.
thing-
No, really though.
Yeah.
Like when you see a full room,
It's usually for.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
scratch
guess
that.
it's
No
true.
signs. Cut it. Cut it from the record.
I like it still in front of the library. It's kind of like reminder me.
Yeah, we can talk with the library.
That's,
We need to make sure though that we don't post things that say, like, in the past, we've done this, where we posted and said, hey, everyone needs to come to this. This is a subdivision. And then they get here and they're like, that's not near my home, or that's not a subdivision I'm concerned about. And then I get texts and angry emails the next day. So they say,
That
Please
was
don't.
communication.
yeah. So we
Okay.
need to let people know if it's affecting them. So a good example is just north of Aspen Meadows here, tying into what the mayor's really emphasizes, making sure that like a PUD, where we don't have a contact for everyone in the PUD, it's tough to get in touch with each person, but letting them know that there's a subdivision that's going to be proposed adjacent to them. And last time we did that, and they came and provided some very valuable comment on that. So yeah, letting them know.
I'd rather lean towards letting them know and maybe they don't show up than them not hearing at all, because that was the biggest thing I heard over and over and over from people all summer long as we were out was, we don't know enough. And I'm going, well, we got a great newsletter and it told us a lot of stuff. And so I started a Facebook page. I'm not the best on updating that, but I still feel like just if we're doing a little bit more, does it take a little bit more effort to blast everybody with the information?
I really
Oh,
think
no.
What do
you
you
have
do?
to be really careful because people
Yeah, we
get
can't blast
so
everyone.
mad.
They get really mad.
Well, is there a way
Partly.
that they can just say, we would like to be on everything? So you give them that option?
They've already got that. So
They
we have
have.
an email that we can
I,
send.
I
out.
think social media is probably the best way to do it. And I think that that may be something that we all can do is point people in that direction, make sure you're following North Logan City
If you're under 65,
or
Marie's
no.
got the email that
Yeah.
sends it out to
Okay.
everyone
Okay.
that subscribes to them.
That's a
might
good
have a
idea.
little-
Rotary phone.
the agenda or get the agenda in their emails. and tell me we've got that on their newsletter, say, you want to be on the email list to receive.
That's a good thing to point out as well.
Mhm,
Maybe that's
mhm.
something that we can all say on our social media
Highlight.
too, to pass that
I just want to
along.
support you guys so that there's less negative, more
Mm.
positive.
I mean, you're always gonna have the person though, who's gonna show up, who's like, I had no idea this was happening. And it was like, I don't know how you could have missed it.
Well, there's always people that say, oh, I didn't know
Yeah, so
Well,
I
we're
think
still-
that's gonna be just, you know, when we do hear those complaints, like, why don't you tell us that we try and say, you can get the newsletter, you can follow any of us to find the agenda. But at some point, it's gotta be proactive, so. Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Any other things on that? Okay, updates on the Civic Center. Alan, do you want to give that?
Just the updates on the, I think I gave a report at the beginning. Sorry, I kind of stole the fire from this particular item. But when we talked about that, the RFPs have come in. We'll look at those. We'll analyze those this week and go over and score those. I have a sneaky suspicion that we'll probably end up having to call a lot of references right now. There's some firms we're probably not as familiar with, so we need to call references and make sure we really vet.
How many bids did we get?
I think 5 total, which is really good.
That's great.
I mean, it's fantastic, especially for the way we sent it out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hard line. This is the top dollar that we'll ever spend type bid. It's called a guaranteed max price bid. It's very rare. And people still bid. 5 people bid on that, 5 companies. And so we'll have to do some investigation into each of these and make sure that we pick the best firm.
That's great. I think this just to kind of maybe give you a little bit of background. We were kind of at a crisis point with this when it was at $8.1 million. It was, just kind of something that we couldn't even green light. We just don't have those funds. So the fact that we're kind of back on track with this is a huge relief, at least to me. So, okay. Let's move on to reports from city officers, boards, and committees. Jordan, you're the furthest left, so.
Just one thing, so the tower up on top of the
Uh-huh.
the next 3 Mondays and Tuesdays, Forest Service will be closing off Green Canyon.
Oh, wow.
So you get calls.
Okay. Okay.
For how long?
Next
Over the
3
next-
Mondays.
Next 3
Next 3
Mondays?
Mondays?
3 Mondays and Tuesdays.
Excellent.
Chief?
Is there a good spot to look for the helicopter for me and my children? Okay.
Buzzy's
I'm
house.
not kidding.
Yeah.
They love that kind of stuff. So,
It's Buzzy's house.
okay.
Okay, go ahead, chief. Put it on Facebook. Got it.
All right, thank you. And I think that it's those that voted you in here, they're comfortable. I really believe that because the feedback I get when people talk to me is that they only feel the need to come forward when they see something they're not liking. And unfortunately, that's what we hear the most of, right, is the negativity. It doesn't mean that there's not the majority is liking what we're doing. So we just hear the negative, but I think everybody's up here doing a good job. In the first 4 months, we averaged 500 calls a month for the police department. So January through April, we averaged 500 calls a month. Our 2 new officers that we hired, they have both successfully completed their FTO program and are now solo in their cars. And so that's been a plus. They're very proactive, which is always fun to see the younger guys get out there and really get into it. So we're working with the city to address the multiple complaints of parking. So you as council may or may not be receiving those same complaints, but there are multiple areas within the city that I've been working with the mayor, with Alan, Jordan, to try and resolve those issues. There was a 2 citizens here earlier tonight that was one of the things that they were bringing up is they wanted to know what was happening. And I informed them that we were already working to try to resolve that.
And I've
issue.
answered
So
several emails on that topic as well.
Are these specific areas? I guess I'm not.
It's
we
the
do
new
have
medical office building.
Oh, I was gonna bring
and
that up
then
tonight. Okay.
Around
Meadowview Park.
Meadowview.
Yeah. And Hyde Park is also aware of the area in which they need to help us try and resolve some of these complaints too, that are right on the border there. So something else, your borders on 3100, north side, we write tickets into Hyde Park, south side, we write them into North Logan, and that's always confusing. Move the border a little bit one way or the other. So just a quick update on our DUIs have gone up 160% this year for the same time frame as last year. Our assaults have gone up 200%. Some good news, our child abuses have dropped by 36%.
Hmm.
So we're seeing some increases in some areas. Now, I think that the DUIs are staffing levels, and you guys can take some pride in having a hand in that. I think the increase in our staffing has helped be more proactive and actually out there stopping these cars and finding the impaired drivers. So I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing when you hear that increased number, because we're catching more of them, right? And so, but there has been an increase, a substantial increase. So anyways, any questions? And those of you that are on the commission, I just now had my second call tonight that they're both from North Logan. So I can't lose any more North Logan for commission tomorrow night.
I'll be there
Roger.
tomorrow night.
Roger's got to be there.
Roger and
Yeah,
Dudley?
sorry, guys. I'm just work tomorrow till like.
You're good.
9, yeah.
I'm teasing. Lloyd
Okay.
won't be there either.
Just one question.
Yes, sir.
And I didn't know the medical clinic was being addressed. So I actually got pulled into a conversation about striping. This might be for you, Jordan. First of all, we're not going to prohibit parking on 400 East, I assume, of the medical clinic.
In an area, yes. So 30 feet
Along
from
the roundabout?
intersection, yeah. Well,
Just enforcing the
but
existing
the
laws. You have to be 30
entrance-
feet
Yeah.
from
So the
the.
question I was getting, so, okay, good. The question I was getting is if the city would entertain striping like Logan has on Main Street, the car slots where people can park. And I'm like, I can ask.
I don't think it's big enough, is it, to have
You're-
them angled?
you wouldn't.
No,
you
not
wouldn't-
angled. You know what I'm talking about, like the
Yeah.
T's and the L.
You would only have, if the signs get approved by the mayor to actually go forward with this, once you take a look at that and through Alan, my recommendation, you'll probably have 3 spots on that west side of Fourth
Fourth
East,
East,
right
okay.
on Fourth East.
Okay.
So there's not going to be many spots that they'll be able to park in on the roadway, just because of the danger it causes for those that are trying to exit the community there onto Fourth East, plus then the roundabout traffic
And
and the bike path
I would
actually goes
still-
right there. So
Even 3
Okay.
spots, I actually kind of think that might be nice to have, so people could realize how little parking
The
is
visual is
actually
pretty
available.
I think,
yes,
can we
yes.
start with the signs? That's kind of where
Oh,
I
okay.
am with it, because the thing that gets me is that there are bunches of parking spots open. So it's not a lack of parking, it's an unwillingness to walk 20 feet more.
But
Yeah,
the ones that I'm seeing most of the parking are people who I think are like, oh, these
Just gonna
people
run
all
in.
parked on the street. So
Right.
clearly, because they're far enough that I'm like, just go there and you'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth trying to see if we can
Okay.
enforce these sightlines, and then,
it
if
doesn't
we
work,
need
then
to
do the
get,
Ts.
yeah.
The
Okay.
north lot there's still a lot of construction folks using the north lot, so that should open up more too
Okay.
when they're done with a couple other floors there. But yeah, if there's only gonna be 3 spots there, maybe.
approximately
Which starts
per
there
space,
too.
I think it would not be cost effective for the city to try and paint lines. The upkeep of that, I think when we get the signs up, the enforcement can actually occur at that point,
Okay.
just like out in front of Meadow.
Yeah, there were
View.
like 15 there today. So that's when I went by, I'm like,
I
man.
had to squeeze between 2 cars to paint the line.
Oh,
to-
really? To market.
You were out.
It was an
painting?
Audi, so I was nervous because of the orange paint.
You painted it today? Or just
I
Just
painted just as
mark where they
references.
could be.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, this is great.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
I'll be a lot more brief than him. Just a couple
He
things. I
buttered
think-
us up in the beginning, so he
Okay.
can talk.
You guys are awesome, just so you know. I appreciate working with you. I do. I miss being serious.
You're my best friend.
Alan mentioned briefly that we did a hazmat drill at U-Star, which is houses a lot of very nasty diseases. We usually do a tour every year when they're shut down. But this is probably the first time we've done an actual multi-agency hazmat drill, probably in 15 years. That was a success. It obviously pointed out some, challenges that we have with that type of building because it's regulated by federal code, not fire code, which makes it a little bit difficult for us at times, especially in relationship to emergency response. But just also another note that call volume is interestingly up dramatically this year. It's 31% to date in North Logan compared to last year at the same time. So we've seen an uptick collectively, probably at about 11%, but it seems like the growing areas outside of Logan.
Do you
busier.
have a breakdown of those numbers?
I
What
do.
kind of
You
calls
want me
there?
to send you?
That'd
I
be
can send-
great.
Yes, please.
I can send you guys monthly if you want,
that'd be awesome.
just
We
a
love
list
that.
of call types. Generic speaking, it just has, the call types and numbers, but I
Yeah.
can send you that annual. It's an annual, but shows monthly as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll get those to you.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other questions for me?
No, do keep us updated on the fireworks situation.
I will.
You know, if you have any recommendations or education kind of things that we can do.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, usually I don't have anything. I guess I have to tell you guys you're awesome.
You
That's something we're
do,
doing
it's
today,
mandated.
so Great job. I did have a couple things, just highlights from the conference as well. Just some numbers, just to give people an idea of the feeling from the state, and what I think is going to be a pattern continuing to go forward. A lot of discussions on growth and water. Just some quick numbers. We're 2% unemployment with 4% job growth. 600,000 people more coming in at 2030. That's not to say that we have to change everything or anything in North Logan to accommodate that, but just to keep people aware of what we're hearing and kind of pass that message on. I wouldn't be surprised if more things get passed down the way, because in a lot of cases, I think there are different parties painting the cities as the villain of this story, and just trying to make sure that we update our plans and stay in compliance with state code so that we can counteract that narrative, that the city is just the bad guy causing the problem, which isn't true. Another quick thing is just water. Great study by USU, showing how little you can water different grass. Quarter acre, half acre, and inch. They applied it one time per month over the course of the growing season on 3 different plots. One just got a quarter acre one time per month, half inch. They showed pictures. All of it went dormant, looked like it was dead. In the fall, all of it came back. So that's not to say we should recommend everybody let their lawn go completely dormant and yellow this year, but if you get significant pushback on water restrictions or reducing water, people's lawns aren't going to die. And that's studies from USU that they did. One other thing, just really quick, in 2 weeks, the workshop from here, tentatively, moderate income housing plan to get our plan up to the new code. We've got to pick from a different menu of options. So we had strategies. We have to pick 5 from a new list now. I don't know if they give us enough time with our last strategies, but we got to redo that. So I figured that'd be good to do in a workshop session. Getting a lot of interest and comments and questions from a lot of people about mixed use. So I'm going to put together a whole mixed use zone and areas that have been requested. We can talk through that as a strategy as a whole, rather than looking at necessarily only just individual sites. I feel like we should have a strategy on the whole and decide if we're going to adopt that. So that's on the list. I'm also going to try to get Mike Hansen in, or somebody else in, if we can, to talk about general plans. Mike Hansen's with Rural Community Consultants. He's contracted with the state to do educations on general plans. Our last general plan was updated in 2013 as a whole. Elements since then have been updated, like moderate income housing, but we may want to look at the whole general plan. And so if I can get somebody in for that, that'd be good. I may try to get somebody from Bragg in for the moderate income housing plan as well. If there's anything else, this is a great opportunity with Planning Commission and City Council to talk about things in a less formal, more interactive space to determine direction of city. Please let me know and I can get it on the agenda.
Is that the 19th?
I believe
Yeah,
so.
it is.
19.
So yeah, let's get things on the agenda and use the time we have in there. It's not a set thing. We can be flexible.
Okay.
So.
Thanks, Spencer. All right, Scott, Marie.
Yeah, I'm gonna need 3 pages now.
Justify taxes, go. Alan,
I won't go over all the events. This is just a document in here. If you get time, it's in the folder in this item, and go through all the events coming up. Everything from the the city office groundbreaking. We'll have to set a date for that in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks with the mayor.
I'm hoping, we're kind of aiming for that being, I think it's the 10th, which is Friday. That's when the kickoff is for all the library events. I don't know if we're going to be ready, but that's tentatively what I've been planning, just so everyone knows.
That would be great. And then summer library kickoff that you just mentioned, touch a truck, the burnout. I don't know if we've had any discussion with them this year. Jordan usually organizes that. It's a fantastic event. Hundreds to 1,000 people attend. It's a huge event. What it is, they just go and burn out their tires. Sounds boring, but it's amazingly fun. And then the employee party, July 11th, Pioneer Day, July 25th. Keep that in mind. That's a Monday.
It's a what day?
A Monday.
Okay.
So you'd attend it. Our Pioneer Day occurs on the state holiday. If you want to go through those, just take a look at those. That's the only update for now. If people ask, the easiest response though is just say we always do it on the state holiday. Because back in the day, we used to try to adjust and put it on the weekends and other things, and we just got yelled at. So now we just do it on the state holiday, no matter when
Okay,
it
and just
is.
on that topic, Jim Gass has said that he'll help again with the Pioneer Day breakfast.
That'd be awesome.
He really struggled to get volunteers last year. So if you have ideas, if you can encourage your neighborhoods to get involved, it's something that we've been doing forever. And I think Joe may be involved. I think he still will be involved, but
Was it to serve or anything in
yeah,
particular? Because
set up, serve the food.
we had the commission and council did it maybe 4 years ago.
Really?
and
Do you want us to do it again?
it's not a
That
bad
might be
idea.
great.
Yeah, I do.
May not want to serve eggs there this year.
Why?
Egg shortage. Have you seen the prices? of
Oh,
eggs?
yeah,
Eggs are up.
because of
Oh,
avian
yeah.
flu. We'll let you Google that on your own.
Keep in mind, there are like 10 or 15 events that day. I think a lot of people don't realize that. There's a fun run, a breakfast, a fishing contest. These are taking place throughout the day. The largest parade in the valley takes place. That's the Pioneer Day Parade. We had the activities afterwards, the charity barbecue.
And do we typically just do one car or like one truck for city council in that? Okay.
You get,
And I can BYO horse. Is that the,
you just can't.
Yes.
You can't throw the candy from it though.
I'll ride a
can I borrow a
horse.
horse? I held mine from like 4 hours away last time.
Get like a little donkey I can ride on or something.
Yeah.
I'd like a horse.
pony for you.
Can we all be
All
on
right.
horses?
I do
Um,
not know how to
I'll-
ride.
I
will
So
float.
I
You in the back of the
would
truck,
prefer
Emily,
not to be. on a
I will
horse if I can
float.
avoid
It is going downhill. People are fleeing right now.
Okay,
you
Run.
guys.
Nope. Okay, well,
Rightfully so.
Thanks, Chief.
Recording.
Okay. But if you do think of anything, if you can encourage your neighbors, that'd be great. But I will let them know that the city council would consider that. That's,
And the commission.
they need 50.
Yeah.
So it's considerable. Okay, anything else before we take a brief recess?
Another group that you may want to get involved is the Daughters of Utah Pioneers. This is the 175th anniversary of the Pioneer Day when they came into Salt Lake Valley. This year, have them be involved. They're looking at several different things, fundraising activities, other things that they'll be involved in. So they would be another source to be involved in the breakfast.
Okay, great. I'll let them know. All right. Anything
That's
else?
good.
Can we
Okay,
do
I
any
would,
kind of fundraising at these events for first responders or city needs?
so we are going to be devoting all fundraising efforts to the
library.
community center.
Sorry,
Um,
no.
And
Sorry.
they are, well, and I don't know that, anyway, but they're well on their way with planning those. They're doing a fantastic job. The Friends of the Library and the library itself, but that's where we've got to kind of focus so that we're not repeatedly putting our hand out. So, yeah. Yeah, so there are going to be a lot of different tiers of that. It's going to be events with fundraising, raffles, and then we're looking into that, having, a wall of sponsors. We're talking about how to do that, pavers.
Okay.
So, all right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Do we not
Motion
have
to
executive?
adjourn
No
with a
executive?
brief
We're going to
recess
adjourn into
Oh,
executive.
And go to
Sorry,
motion to.
motion to move to executive.
Executive session.
Okay, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Craig. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I'm gonna grab that door.
I thought we were done.
I don't know, honestly, if we have a lot to talk about.
Wait, just 1 minute.
We gotta get offline.
Yeah.
Hurry, cut it.
Craig, you are the best.
Unplug the internet. Dude, Emily.
Okay, so